Welcome back, Village, to another episode of Jedi Learning with Baba Kintu. Today we will discuss a recent executive order put into place in order to subsidize the learning opportunities for those without in-person learning. Now, this was called the Executive Order for School Choice, and essentially what it did is it made funds available for those eligible entities to provide learning and emergency scholarships to those students who need them the most. Now, there's quite a few parts to this order. Actually, there's only three. And the first part really discusses why this is a problem in the first place. What harm has COVID caused as far as in-person learning? So they go over the descriptions of students who are struggling, and they start off with those from lower incomes. Obviously, these students are getting the short end of the stick because they don't have any other options for education. They're basically what they call institution dependent, which means that if they don't get the knowledge from the institution, they're definitely not going to get it at home. They don't have those rich tabletop conversations. They may not have highly educated parents to discuss things with them of higher knowledge and higher realms of consciousness. So they have to get it from an institution of some sort, and usually that's the public school system. So those students who are struggling economically are being hit the hardest. They're not able to get school lunch, and the CDC has also indicated that those students are at higher risk for depression because of the social isolation, as well as abuse. Because they're not going to a school every day, they're at risk for abuse because they are not around mandated reporters. Teachers, school staff, school nurses, even the janitor is considered a mandated reporter, which means if they suspect abuse, they can go ahead and make a report that would then have that abuse investigated. Now, we can look at that from the other side and say, well, when students go to school, who is protecting our students from a lot of these school staff? We've talked in the past about teachers having relationships with students, and what the demographic of a lot of those teachers are like. We talked about school shootings, school violence, school disciplinary practices where students are getting harmed. But that is besides this point we're talking about today. But they are indicating that students are at risk for anxiety, depression, loneliness, all of these things that might come with, like I said, social isolation, being away from your peers, being away from teachers or adults who might be able to at least give you a helping hand. You know, a lot of times there are adults at an institution like that who can at least look out for you. Hopefully, they are at your site. But who else is affected? Obviously, students of color, Black students specifically. They are projected to lose by January, which is in about 3 days. By January 21st, they will have fallen behind roughly 10 to 12% in math and reading scores. This is extremely significant. And actually, I'm sorry, not even 12%, 10 to 12%. It's actually 10 to 12 months of learning behind. So by the time May comes, which is when school usually ends, students of African descent, or students of color in general, should probably be about roughly 2 years behind. That's another reason why this executive order is so important, because it will address the need for remedial education for students such as those that we just discussed. So even school institutions that we just talked about are suffering. So private schools, Catholic schools, parochial schools, they have all closed because they cannot afford to keep their doors open if there are no students to attend. And we know that I think it's about 50% of students now have no access to education or are chronically absent, even from online learning. So they're just not logging on, and who knows where they're going. We don't know, if they're at the home, if they're out in the streets. We have no idea where a lot of the students are going because they're not able to be counted like they were when they were in those seats. And this is how schools function. They function off of that daily attendance. And if students aren't in the seats, then they essentially don't get paid. Now that we've laid down what the problem is as far as emotionality, who's affected the most, how are both institutions and students affected, how are families affected? Obviously, no lunch. If you don't have any lunch, even though the lunch program is something that we will discuss very soon as something that is not as friendly as we thought it was in the first place. But no access to food is no access to food. So those students who were dependent on school lunch no longer have access to that. And families who now have to subsidize this school lunch are being hit harder in the pockets. So they have to dig a little bit deeper or scrape a little bit more just to provide lunch that students were getting every day at the school site. But now that we know who's been hit the hardest, what is happening? And this is where the heat gets turned up. This is the good part. The executive order for school choice is now in. We've been talking about it. We've been saying, Miguel Cardona, if you get in, are you down with school choice? And we said, yeah, actually, he probably didn't have any say-so in this because school choice has been coming down the pipeline even before Betsy DeVos got her hands in it. And she was our last Secretary of Education. So now that we have Miguel Cardona in, we were worried about if school choice was still going to be available because we knew that these disparities were there, and we know students need a culturally specific education in order to be able to provide for their community. That's now available. Through these block grants, these community block grants, like I said, these eligible entities and institutions will be able to provide these learning scholarships, emergency learning scholarships for students who do not have access to in-person learning. So you can spend that money if you are a family who qualifies, or if you're an institution who qualifies to give these scholarships to students. They can use it for tutoring. They can use it for special ed services. They can use it for private schools. They can use it for micro schools, home pods, homeschooling, almost any type of supplemental education that you can think of, you can use these funds for. And this is all that we ask, specifically us in the Black community, is that we have a choice. Where can we take our students to learn what they need to learn to uplift not only themselves, but the entire community? So this is something that we see as a very, very positive note from the field of education. But we are not blind. We know that all things must come with some strings attached to them. At this time, we don't know what those strings are. We don't know what the stipulation is for accessing these grants or these scholarships. As that information becomes available, we here at Jedi Learning will let the village know exactly what to do to take it to your favorite African-centered institution. But right now, we have no idea. But it can be tied to a number of things. So also beware. Maybe it's tied to vaccinations. Maybe it's tied to only certain types of institutions. Maybe it's tied to, who knows? Like I said, we just don't know at this point in time, but we've seen these things in the past come to bite us. But be that as it may, at least right now, it seems like things are on the up and up. The last section are just general provisions. This is not making new law. It is just an executive order. It can be reversed when the next administration gets in. When the Biden administration gets in, they can reverse this if they, see fit. I don't see that happening, but it's a possibility. This is actually signed by Donald J. Trump, so this is something that he's putting into place with Betsy DeVos before they go out and changing of the guard. So we're looking at this and we're saying, what else might be in this little package? What might be hiding? And we always want to keep our eye out, and we will definitely let the family know any little stipulations that might not be spelled out initially. Also, we'll let families know and institutions know exactly what you need to do in order to apply for these grants or for these scholarships. Is it a letter that you have to write? Is there a document that you have to fill out? What is the process? What does it look like? How do I actually get the funds in my hand? And how do I get it to the institution of my choosing? These are questions that still need to be answered. And these are holes that still need to be filled. And look no further than Jedi Learning, because we definitely got our dump truck out and we filling holes and landfills and whatever else needs filling right about now. So we definitely wanted to give the family and the village some updated information on what is going on the educational home front, how it's affecting you. As you know, this is Barbican 2 with Jedi Learning, where we talk about philosophy, psychology, and education from an African perspective. Today, we just addressed education, specifically the executive order for school choice that was just signed in last night. So you got your $2,000 supposedly coming. You got some school choice supposedly coming. 2021 is already looking better than 2020. but nobody can see into the future. So we will keep our eyes peeled. This is Jed Learning, and we will see you soon, definitely before the new year, and possibly even before the end of this week. So we hope everybody out there has been informed. If you have any questions, comments, or concern, always let us know. We're more than eager to answer any questions that you might have. And remember, anyone can learn to learn. Peace.